Hey there, Chris Piercy of Just Coaching here with another video. This one is about how to stop black and white thinking. Go. Let's apologise for that go thing. Don't know what that was. Yeah, CBT brings up black and white thinking and all or nothing thinking more commonly than anything else. It's a very simple idea where people think that things either have to be 100% or 0%. If you get 99% on the test, you've failed. Just in case you're not quite sure about how this might affect things, here's a few examples. If you work in a call centre and you have 99 calls in a day that are fantastic and one call in the day which is bad, and you leave there thinking that the day is bad, that's black and white thinking. If you give a presentation at work and you stumble over a few words and then you think that the presentation was terrible just because you blah 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 a few words, then that is black and white thinking. Basically, in a nutshell, something good happens, life is wonderful. Something bad happens, life is terrible. So why is this such a bad thing? Well, because there's only two extremes, it can lead to massive mood swings because if something's either really good or really bad and there's nothing in the middle, the brain can just be a little bit all over the place. Now, this is not the same as manic depression, although manic depression or bipolar disorder does have elements of black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking in it. But it is not my intention to talk about manic depression and bipolar disorder within this video, just to be clear about that. Let's examine how we describe events that happen in our lives, both to ourselves and maybe to other people if we're talking about them. Now, people who are prone to all or nothing thinking tend to use words like always, never, everything, nothing. They use words which are literally 0% or 100%, even in cases where that isn't strictly true. Maybe it's the case that your partner forgets to take the bins out once, and then you say, oh, he never takes them out. That is a great example of all or nothing thinking. So what do we do instead? Well, it can just be the case that you include the word almost or seldom or something like that just before the never or everything or nothing. It just opens up the possibility in your head that it could be in this kind of grey area where we want to live in the middle rather than being in the extreme. So, oh, my partner almost never remembers to take the bins out or something like that. So just including almost or something just to kind of, rarely is a good one as well. Just include a little kind of softener before the everything or nothing or whatever, just to get your brain into the idea that this grey area does exist. Number two, start being more honest about things. This is kind of similar to what we just described, but let's say you're describing events to a friend about how you're getting on with dating at the moment. You say, oh, I never get any matches. Now, is that actually true? Have you actually got literally 0 matches, or have you just got a few matches and you're not really getting on with those people very well? So which is it? Describe events to yourself and to other people as they actually are. It can be nice to kind of make it a bit more dramatic, saying, oh, I never match with anyone, or whatever it might be. But actually be honest about the event that's occurring and say, yeah, I've only got 3 matches. Be honest and factual about how you explain events to other people. Once again, this is all just pushing you towards this grey area in the middle where we would like to be existing. Look for evidence that you're wrong. Now, one of the key things that comes out quite often is, I failed at this, therefore I'm a failure at my entire life. That is something which is very prevalent within therapy rooms, that this idea that if you failed at one little thing, then your whole life is a failure. And it just simply isn't true. At times, if you ever catch yourself thinking that or saying that, just take a step back and say, what evidence have I got that this is actually true? How can I prove that this is actually true? How can I prove that I am a failure? And chances are that you can't. Just because you failed at one thing doesn't mean that you're failing at everything. You can actually do this as an exercise. Literally write down in full sentences, I am not a failure because I keep a roof over my child's head every month. I'm not bad at work presentations. I actually got good feedback from a number of my colleagues. I am not unfit. I just didn't run very well today because I had a really bad sleep last night. If you are enjoying this, please click the like button and subscribe. Number 4, balance out your statements. If you have had a really shitty day, then you can say, I've had a really shitty day, but balance it out by finishing off that sentence with something which is just a little bit more positive. So, I've had a really shitty day, but I got a text from my cousin who I haven't heard from for a while, and we're going to have a video call tonight. Just anything that comes into your head that's negative or kind of extreme, balance it out with something which tips the scales back in the other direction. Number 5, and this is probably the best thing in the video, so well done for sticking around to number 5. It's annoyingly good. I'm sorry, it's going to piss you right off. When something happens in your life, give it a score out of 10, where 0 is like the worst thing that could possibly happen. Nothing could be worse. And 10 is the best thing possible, and nothing can be better than that. Whatever happens, give it a score between 0 and 10. And here's the clever bit. As I've mentioned a couple of times in this video already, we want to live in this kind of grey area. I don't know why it's here, it might be here, but it's between here and here. That's the important part. It's not at 0 and it's not at 10. So we're trying to live in this little grey area here. So if at any point you give something a score between 1 and 9, awesome. Because it's not at either extremes that is like it's really, really good, right? That you're not at either end. So you're recognizing that this grey area does actually exist. So if you get something that's a 0, that means it couldn't possibly be worse. So if you scored something a 0, take a step back and ask yourself, what would make the situation worse? And here's the thing. If there's nothing that could possibly make that situation any worse, then you're absolutely right to feel really crap about it. Because if I had something happen to me that couldn't possibly be any worse, I would feel awful as well. So would anyone, right? It'd be awful because it'd be a situation that couldn't possibly get any worse. But if there's something that could make that situation worse, it then ceases to be a 0. I'm getting quite smug right now. Then it has to not be a 0 and it has to be moved up to a 1 or a 2 or something like that. So either it's so bad, then yes, absolutely you should feel bad about it, or it could be worse, in which case it then ceases to be a 0. I told you it's really annoying. So when anything happens in your life, good or bad, give it a score in your head between 0 and 10, and then analyze the results. Because if it's a 0 or a 10, and it can get worse or it could get better, then it ceases to be a 0 or 10, and we start living more in this grey area here. I'm sorry. Cold was the east wind, bitter, it cut into my skin like razor blades. When we tell stories about our lives and the things that are going on, we tend to try and make them as interesting as possible. And the way that we normally do this is by including strong emotive words, because that kind of hooks people in and gets them kind of invested in the story, right? You need to do the opposite of that. You need to be, like we said it before about being more honest, but you just need to tone down the language that we're using when we're talking about what's going on. So if you're a little bit annoyed about something, don't tell someone that you're furious, because that's not exactly, well, firstly, it's not true, but it's just really, really extreme when it doesn't need to be. You're a bit annoyed, you're not furious. Those are two entirely different things. Similarly, if someone says, that sounded weird then. Similarly, still sounds weird. I'm carrying on anyway. If something's gone a bit wrong, it's gone a bit wrong. Don't say, oh, it was a disaster. It just went a bit wrong. Big difference. Essentially, the words we use out loud and in our heads actually controls how we feel. So if we keep saying, oh, I'm furious about something when you're only a bit annoyed, it actually starts becoming a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell someone that you're furious, you will start feeling furious. And if you feel furious, then all of a sudden you're furious. And then by telling yourself you're furious, you become furious. I'm going to stop saying furious now. But basically, tone down the emotive language about how you describe what's going on in your life. Just to be even more boring again and mention the same thing yet again, we want to be living in this grey area in the middle. And when we find ourselves in a situation where we think, well, it's either got to be this or it's got to be that, it couldn't possibly be anything else. Well, I ask you to check whether this is true. You can simply ask yourself, am I missing any possibilities here? Let's give an example. Let's say that your partner starts liking the Instagram posts of someone you think they might fancy. And you think, well, either I've got to break up with him, or I've got to just be a doormat and not say anything about it whatsoever. What am I going to do? I don't like either of those options. So what's some different possibilities? I will make the point here that these are not things that I would suggest all of them, they are just different possibilities. Ask your partner about it. Take some time to see if anything develops before mentioning anything. Speak to your friends about the situation. Speak to your partner's friends about it. Make passive-aggressive comments about people liking Instagram posts. Don't do that. Decide that liking someone's Instagram post isn't actually that much of a big deal. Do something grandiose to remind your partner of what they're possibly risking. Now, some of these answers are way better than the others, but just to see that there's a whole realm of opportunities and possibilities in this situation rather than the two extremes that you started with is a great way of seeing that there is a huge grey area and lots of different ways of reacting rather than the two extremes. And that is what's important, recognizing that there are different options available. Consult other people about how you're feeling. Now, you can either do this as a mental exercise or actually talk to someone directly about it. But if you're thinking something in your head, you can ask yourself, what would my best friend say about this situation? What would my best friend be thinking about this situation? What would my mum say in this situation? You know, what would Gandhi think in this situation, or whoever? They will have an entirely different viewpoint to you, possibly. Or they might just validate what you're thinking already. Either thing is quite good, because either you can see that it's not ridiculous to be thinking how you're thinking, or you can say, well, actually, I can see there are other possibilities and other ways of looking at this now, which is, again, very helpful. Number 9, not that we're keeping count here. Give yourself some time and give yourself some space about whatever is going on. Right? Our brains, particularly when they're anxious, can really kind of pressure us to kind of think that there needs to be a decision needs to be made exactly now, right now, on the spot. What's the answer? Go, tell me. A lot of the time this isn't actually true. Sometimes it is, and absolutely then this is not the right kind of bit of advice in that particular situation. But if there is time to make a decision, then use it. Give yourself time to take a step back from the situation and think about it in depth. Like, find other bits of evidence, find out more information, because the more information and the more time you give yourself, the better you can see the different possibilities and the bigger the grey area in the middle actually gets. Because you can feel this time pressure, but just because you feel it doesn't mean it's necessarily there. So if there isn't time pressure on it, give yourself that time and space before you jump into any decision. Number 10, learn about dialectical thinking. Now, what is that, you ask? Well, it's the idea that two opposite things can exist in someone's head at exactly the same time and still make sense. So what's an example of this? Well, you might say to yourself, well, I love my partner, but I'm still angry at him about this. So you love them, but you're angry. Or we can be like really happy having time to ourselves, but also feel lonely in that time as well. And it is possible to love your body and accept your body, but still want to be making changes to it as well. Get your head around this idea of dialectical thinking and how two opposite things can exist in your head at the same time and make complete sense. Hopefully I've explained that well enough. If I haven't, drop me a comment. Viewing the world in such a black and white way can be confusing, it can be damaging to your life and damaging to your career and damaging to relationships, because you're either in one place or you're in another and never living in the grey area in the middle. And it is not something which has much longevity to it, and it's something that can make you feel so crap, because if you just fail a little bit, you really feel like you failed completely, and that's not a nice place to be living. It would be crazy of me to think that anything that I've said in this video is just going to make an instant change to you overnight, but it's going to be a process which you're going to have to go through. Your goal, perhaps, should just be at the start, just to catch yourself doing some black and white thinking just once in a day. Just one time, it's like, well, I thought it was this or this, but now I recognise there's this option in the middle as well. So just catching yourself once is a great first step. Then you do that for a while, and then you try and catch yourself twice in a day, and then 3 times in a day, and then half the time that you do it, and then all of the time you do it. It will be a slow process over time, but it is something that you can get your head around and you can start to control. Just build up your progress slowly and be happy with any progress that you make, and be very cognizant of the fact it's not just going to be a straight line from here to here where you absolutely succeed every single time. There will be ups, there will be downs, there'll be bumps in the road as you go along, but it's about progress, not perfection. So anytime you slip up, just as all or nothing thinking says, it's not like that. Just because you fail a little bit doesn't mean that you have to kind of give up on the whole thing. Now, if you found that you are someone who is prone to all or nothing thinking, or black and white thinking, however you want to refer to it as, and you would like some help with that or something else to do with your life, whether it's anxiety, self-confidence, low self-esteem, or you just got goals in your life that you'd like to hit, then get in touch about working with me one-on-one to be your life coach and cognitive behavioural hypnotherapist. There's a link in the comments below to do that. Or if you'd like to do it by yourself, then I have a course, Anxiousness to Awesomeness, a 4-week online course teaching you loads of different techniques to help you overcome anxiety. Oh, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really does help. And leave a comment with anything you think about the whole thing, good or bad.